Imagine waking up every day with complete control over your emotions, your reactions, and your direction in life. Most people are not controlled by reality. They are controlled by their thoughts about reality. A weak mind creates fear. A distracted mind creates confusion. A calm mind creates power. This audiobook is not about motivation. It is about mental control. Because the moment you control your mind, you begin shaping your reality. Your habits change, your decisions improve, your energy becomes focused, and your life starts moving in a new direction. Remember this throughout the entire audiobook. Your mind is the blueprint of your future. If you cannot control your thoughts, you cannot control your life. But if you train your mind daily, nothing outside of you will be stronger than you. Like, share, subscribe now. Chapter 1. Control your thoughts before they control you. Most people are not living intentionally. They are reacting. Reacting to stress, reacting to fear, reacting to memories, reacting to opinions, reacting to emotions they never learned how to control. And after years of repeating the same mental patterns, they start calling it personality. That's dangerous, because what you repeat long enough begins to feel normal. A person who constantly thinks negative thoughts eventually says, "This is just who I am." No, that is not who they are. That is what they practiced. That's the key. Your thoughts are not harmless background noise. They are instructions. Every thought sends a signal. Every repeated thought strengthens a mental pathway. And eventually, your mind begins obeying those thoughts automatically. That is why some people expect rejection before they even speak. Why some people assume failure before they even try. Why some people sabotage opportunities without realizing it. Their mind has been trained to expect pain, and the brain always moves toward what it expects. Listen carefully. Thoughts become patterns. Patterns become reality. Repeat that again. Thoughts become patterns. Patterns become reality. Most people never stop long enough to examine what is happening inside their own mind. They wake up already stressed, already negative, already defeated. Not because reality is terrible, but because their thinking has become automatic. Mental autopilot. That is where most people live. They do not choose their thoughts consciously. They simply replay yesterday. The same fear, the same insecurity, the same excuses, the same emotional reactions, day after day, year after year. And then they wonder why life never changes. But your life cannot change if your thinking stays the same. You have a choice. You can continue allowing random thoughts to control your emotions, or you can become the gatekeeper of your own mind. That's the difference. Weak minds absorb everything. Strong minds evaluate everything. A weak mind believes every fearful thought immediately. A strong mind pauses and asks, "Is this thought helping me or destroying me?" That question alone can change your life, because not every thought deserves your attention, and not every emotion deserves your obedience. Understand this clearly. Your first thought is automatic. Your second thought is your power. That first thought may come from fear, from old conditioning, from childhood, from past failures, from insecurity. But the second thought, that is where your awareness begins. That is where control begins. Imagine someone ignores your message. Your first thought might be, "They don't respect me." But your second thought can say, "Stop assuming, stay calm." That changes everything. Or maybe you fail at something important. Your first thought might say, "I'm not good enough." But your second thought can say, "This is feedback. Learn and continue." You see the difference? One thought destroys momentum. The other builds strength. That's the key. Most people believe thoughts are facts. They are not. A thought is only a sentence in your mind, nothing more. But if you repeat it enough times, your body begins reacting to it as if it were reality. That is how fear grows. Fear grows through repetition, not always through danger. Read that again mentally. Fear grows through repetition. Some people repeat fear so often internally that anxiety becomes their identity. What if I fail? What if they judge me? What if I embarrass myself? What if things go wrong? Again and again. The mind hears repetition and says, "This must be important," and then the body responds with stress. This is why controlling your mind matters so much, because an uncontrolled mind creates unnecessary suffering. Successful people understand this. They interrupt destructive thinking quickly, not eventually, immediately. When negativity appears, they challenge it. When fear appears, they confront it. When excuses appear, they replace them with action. Because they understand something most people never learn. You cannot build a powerful life with a weak internal conversation. You don't need perfection, you need awareness. That's the key, awareness. The moment you become aware of your thinking patterns, you stop being controlled by them. Now you can choose, and choice is power. Most people never use that power. They simply react emotionally to every thought that enters their head. If they think something negative, they believe it instantly. If they feel insecure, they surrender instantly. If they feel fear, they stop moving instantly. That is mental slavery. You were not designed to live like that. You were designed to think consciously, to observe yourself, to direct yourself, to train yourself. Think about someone learning to drive a car. At first, every movement feels difficult, but eventually repetition creates automation. The same thing happens mentally. If you constantly repeat confidence, discipline, focus, and calm thinking, those become automatic. But if you constantly repeat fear, hesitation, anger, and insecurity, those become automatic too. Your mind adapts to whatever you repeat most. So ask yourself honestly, what thoughts have you been rehearsing daily? Failure, doubt, comparison, self-hatred, excuses? Because if those thoughts are repeated long enough, they stop feeling temporary. They start feeling permanent. That's how identity gets built. Not in one moment, in repetition. Thoughts become patterns, patterns become reality. That phrase matters because your external life eventually reflects your internal conditioning. A person who constantly expects rejection behaves differently. They hesitate, they overthink, they avoid risks, they speak with uncertainty. And then rejection becomes more likely, not because destiny hates them, but because their thinking shaped their behavior. That's the key. Your thoughts influence your actions. Your actions influence your results. And your results reinforce your beliefs. This cycle continues until you interrupt it consciously. You have a choice. You can feed thoughts that weaken you or thoughts that strengthen you. You can feed discipline or excuses, confidence or insecurity, calm or chaos. No one else can make that decision for you, and no one else is coming to save your mind for you. That responsibility belongs to you. Some people spend years trying to control other people, trying to control circumstances, trying to control outcomes, but they cannot even control their own thinking for 5 minutes. That is why they suffer. Real power begins internally, not externally. You don't need their permission to become mentally stronger. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You need self-awareness. You need discipline. You need the courage to challenge destructive thinking. That's the beginning. And here is another truth most people avoid. Your environment influences your mind constantly. What you watch matters. What you listen to matters. Who you spend time with matters. Negative environments create negative thinking patterns. If you surround yourself with constant complaining, fear, gossip, and emotional chaos, your thinking becomes infected. Protect your mind carefully. Your attention is valuable. Your focus is valuable. Stop feeding your brain garbage and expecting clarity. That's impossible. A calm mind requires intentional input. That means silence sometimes, reflection sometimes, distance from negativity sometimes. Strong people are careful about what enters their mind repeatedly because they know repetition creates identity, and identity shapes reality. Most people are trying to change their life without changing their thinking. That never lasts. External changes without internal change always collapse eventually. You can force motivation temporarily, but lasting transformation requires mental retraining. Daily, again and again. This is not a one-time decision. This is practice. Mental discipline is practice. Catching negative thoughts is practice. Replacing destructive thinking is practice. Remaining calm under pressure is practice. You train the mind of the same way you train the body, through repetition. That's why consistency matters more than intensity. A single positive thought will not change your life, but repeated positive direction will. A single calm reaction will not transform you, but repeated emotional control will. Small mental victories matter. Every time you interrupt a destructive thought, you win. Every time you refuse to spiral emotionally, you win. Every time you replace excuses with action, you win. And over time, those small victories build a powerful identity, a disciplined identity, a calm identity, a focused identity. This is how strong people are built, not through luck, through mental training, daily mental training. Remember this, you become what you rehearse internally. So rehearse strength, rehearse discipline, rehearse confidence, rehearse resilience. Stop rehearsing failure before it happens. Stop imagining disaster constantly. Stop feeding fear every day and expecting peace. That's not how the mind works. You have a choice, and that choice exists every single day, every moment. You can observe your thoughts instead of obeying them. You can slow down instead of reacting instantly. You can challenge fear instead of surrendering to it. That is real power. And once you understand this, your life begins changing from the inside out, because the moment you become the gatekeeper of your own mind, you stop being controlled by every emotion, every opinion, and every negative thought that enters your head. That is freedom. And in the next chapter, you will learn something even deeper. How emotional reactions silently destroy clarity, confidence, and control, and why calm people always appear more powerful than emotional people. Chapter 2. Stop reacting emotionally to everything. Most people are controlled by emotions they never learned how to manage. One bad comment ruins their mood. One rejection destroys their confidence. One difficult moment changes their entire day. That is not power. That is emotional dependency. And emotional dependency makes life harder than it needs to be. Because if your emotions control your decisions, then your life becomes unstable. One day you feel motivated. The next day, you quit. One day you feel confident. The next day you doubt everything. One day you feel focused. The next day you collapse emotionally because something did not go your way. That is what happens when feelings become your leader. Feelings change constantly. That's the key. A strong person does not follow every emotion. A strong person observes emotions without surrendering to them. There is a difference. Most people react first and think later. That destroys relationships, destroys opportunities, destroys peace, destroys discipline. A single emotional reaction can create years of regret. Think about how many people ruin their future because they could not stay calm for one moment, one angry message, one emotional decision, one impulsive action, and suddenly everything changes. This is why emotional control matters, not because emotions are bad, but because uncontrolled emotions are dangerous. You have a choice. You can react emotionally to everything, or you can become calm enough to think clearly before responding. That pause changes everything. That pause is power. Most people fear silence. They feel the need to defend themselves instantly, explain themselves instantly, react instantly. But emotionally mature people understand something important. Not every situation deserves your reaction. That's the key. Sometimes silence is strength. Sometimes walking away is strength. Sometimes staying calm while others lose control is strength. Weak people think emotional reactions make them powerful. They don't. Anyone can yell. Anyone can panic. Anyone can explode emotionally. Real strength is remaining steady under pressure. Real strength is thinking clearly while others lose control. Look at calm people carefully. They move differently. They speak differently. They do not waste energy reacting emotionally to everything around them because they understand something most people never realize. Every emotional reaction costs energy. Anger costs energy. Overthinking costs energy. Drama costs energy. Arguments cost energy. And many people are mentally exhausted because they waste emotional energy on things that do not matter. Opinions, internet arguments, people who misunderstand them, things they cannot control. That constant emotional chaos drains focus, drains discipline, drains peace. And then people wonder why they feel tired all the time. Your nervous system was never designed for non-stop emotional stimulation, but modern life trains people to react constantly. Notifications, news, social media, comparison, arguments, validation seeking. People are emotionally overloaded, and because they never slow down mentally, they become reactive. Everything triggers them. Everything affects them. Everything feels personal. That is dangerous, because emotional people are easy to manipulate. If someone can control your emotions, they can control your behavior. Read that again. If someone can control your emotions, they can control your behavior. That is why emotional discipline is freedom. The calmer you become, the harder you are to control. That's the key. When you stop reacting emotionally to everything, you begin thinking strategically. Now you can respond instead of react. And those are two completely different things. Reaction is automatic. Response is intentional. Reaction comes from impulse. Response comes from awareness. Reaction creates chaos. Response creates control. Imagine someone insults you. An emotional person reacts immediately. They argue, defend themselves, explode emotionally. But a calm person pauses first, and in that pause, they regain control. They ask, "Is this even worth my energy?" That question alone prevents countless mistakes, because not every battle deserves your attention. Most arguments are emotional traps. People pull you into emotional chaos because they lack control over themselves. Do not join them. Protect your peace. Protect your focus. protect your energy. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You do not need to prove yourself constantly. That is emotional insecurity. Strong people are not obsessed with being understood by everyone. They understand themselves. That's enough. Another truth you must accept: your emotions are temporary, but emotional decisions can become permanent. That is why you should never make major decisions while angry, desperate, jealous, or emotionally overwhelmed. Strong emotions distort thinking. They narrow perspective. They create impulsive behavior. And impulsive behavior creates unnecessary damage. This is why calm observation is stronger than emotional reaction. Observation creates clarity. Reaction destroys clarity. When you observe your emotions calmly, you stop becoming their prisoner. You notice anger without exploding. You notice fear without surrendering. You notice insecurity without letting it define you. That awareness changes everything, because now emotions become signals instead of commands. That's the key. Emotions should inform you, not control you. Fear may signal preparation is needed. Anger may signal a boundary was crossed. Sadness may signal something meaningful matters to you. But emotions are not dictators. They are information. You decide what happens next. You have a choice. Most people never realize how addicted they are to emotional intensity. Drama becomes entertainment. Chaos becomes identity. Stress becomes normal. Some people feel uncomfortable when life becomes peaceful because they are addicted to emotional stimulation. That addiction destroys mental clarity. A calm mind sees clearly. An emotional mind exaggerates everything. A calm mind solves problems. An emotional mind creates more problems. That's why successful people train emotional discipline daily, not occasionally, daily. They do not wait until life becomes difficult. They prepare mentally beforehand. They understand that pressure reveals emotional weakness. If small problems destroy your peace, your mind still needs training. And there is no shame in that. Everyone begins emotionally reactive, but not everyone stays there. Growth requires awareness, and awareness requires honesty. So, be honest with yourself. What triggers you constantly? Criticism? Rejection? Being ignored? Failure? Comparison? Disrespect? Those triggers reveal where emotional work is needed, because anything that controls your emotions controls part of your life. That's the truth. Some people cannot handle criticism because their identity is fragile. Some cannot handle rejection because they depend on external validation. Some cannot handle failure because they attached their self-worth to success. But mentally strong people separate identity from temporary experiences. Failure is not identity. Rejection is not identity. Criticism is not identity. A moment is not your entire life. That perspective creates emotional stability, and emotional stability creates confidence. Real confidence is not loud. It is calm. Loud people often try to convince others. Calm people do not need to. They know who they are. That's the difference. Emotional maturity also means accepting discomfort without collapsing. Life will challenge you. People will disappoint you. Plans will fail sometimes. Unexpected problems will appear. That is reality. But emotionally disciplined people adapt instead of panic. They bend without breaking, because they trained themselves not to let temporary emotions control permanent behavior. That is power. Remember this phrase: calm is control. Control is power. Again, calm is control. Control is power. The calm person in the room usually has the greatest advantage because while everyone else reacts emotionally, they are observing, thinking, calculating, deciding carefully. That emotional distance protects them from unnecessary mistakes, and that skill alone can transform your life. Imagine how different your future becomes when you stop reacting impulsively, stop arguing unnecessarily, stop taking everything personally, stop allowing temporary emotions to control permanent decisions. Your relationships improve, your focus improves, your confidence improves, because now your inner world becomes stable, and stability creates strength. Most people are searching for control externally: money, status, attention, validation. But without internal control, external success means nothing. A person with money but no emotional control still suffers. A person with status but no emotional control still feels unstable. Inner control must come first. That's the foundation. And emotional discipline is one of the strongest forms of inner control. So, the next time you feel emotional intensity rising, pause, breathe, observe. Ask yourself, will reacting emotionally improve this situation? Most of the time, the answer is no. That pause is wisdom. That pause is maturity. That pause separates powerful people from reactive people. You have a choice. You can continue living emotionally uncontrolled, or you can train yourself to remain calm under pressure. One path creates chaos, the other creates power. And in the next chapter, you will learn why focus determines the direction of your entire life, and how scattered attention silently destroys potential every single day. Chapter 3. Focus your energy on what you can control. Most people are mentally exhausted for one simple reason: they waste energy on things they cannot control. Other people's opinions, past mistakes, future uncertainty, social comparison, things that may never even happen. Their attention is scattered everywhere, and scattered attention creates a scattered life. That's the key. Where your focus goes, your energy follows, and where your energy goes, your life begins to grow. If your attention constantly feeds fear, drama, negativity, and distraction, your life becomes chaotic. But if your attention feeds discipline, clarity, growth, and action, your life begins changing. Slowly at first, then dramatically. Most people underestimate the power of focus. They think success comes from talent. Sometimes. They think success comes from luck. Occasionally. But long-term transformation usually comes from sustained focus, doing the right things repeatedly, without constantly getting distracted emotionally, without quitting every time life becomes uncomfortable. That is rare. Most people cannot focus because their mind is overloaded. Too much noise, too much comparison, too much distraction, too much emotional clutter. And because they cannot focus clearly, they cannot move consistently. Think about how many people start something important, then stop immediately because their emotions changed. They start exercising, then lose focus. Start building a skill, then lose focus. Start improving their mindset, then get distracted again. That pattern destroys potential because success requires repeated attention, not random bursts of motivation. That's the key. Focus is not intensity. Focus is consistency. A focused person keeps moving even when motivation disappears. That is what separates disciplined people from emotional people. Emotional people only act when they feel inspired. Disciplined people act regardless of mood. You have a choice. You can keep following temporary emotions, or you can follow long-term direction. One creates chaos, the other creates progress. Look at most people carefully. Their attention is constantly stolen. One notification changes their focus. One opinion changes their mood. One distraction changes their direction. And after years of mental distraction, they wonder why nothing meaningful was built, because meaningful things require uninterrupted focus. A strong body requires focused repetition. A strong mind requires focused repetition. A strong future requires focused repetition. Everything valuable grows through sustained attention. But modern life trains people to destroy their own focus. Constant scrolling, constant entertainment, constant stimulation. People are consuming more information than ever, yet becoming mentally weaker. Because information without focus creates confusion. That's why many people feel overwhelmed, not because life is impossible, but because their mind is overloaded with unnecessary noise. You must learn to simplify mentally. That is power. Most things do not deserve your emotional energy. Most distractions are meaningless long-term. Ask yourself honestly, what are you feeding your attention every day? Fear? Comparison? Drama? Negativity? Validation seeking? Because attention is like water. Whatever you feed grows. Feed insecurity long enough, and insecurity grows. Feed confidence long enough, and confidence grows. Feed discipline long enough, and discipline grows. Your focus is shaping your future constantly. That's why protecting your attention matters so much. Every distraction has a cost. People think distractions only waste time. No, distractions also weaken mental momentum. Every time you break focus unnecessarily, you train the brain to become weaker at concentration. And weak concentration creates weak execution. This is why many people struggle to finish anything. Their attention has been fragmented for years. They became addicted to stimulation, addicted to novelty, addicted to escaping discomfort. But growth requires sustained discomfort. That's the truth nobody wants to hear. You cannot build discipline while constantly seeking comfort. You cannot build focus while constantly chasing distraction. And you cannot shape your reality when your attention belongs to everyone else. That's the key. Take your attention back. Protect it carefully. Your future depends on it. Imagine trying to build a house while changing locations every 5 minutes. Impossible. That is how many people live mentally, constantly changing focus, constantly abandoning direction, constantly reacting to external noise. No foundation gets built. Focused people understand something important. Not everything deserves a response. Not everything deserves attention. Not everything deserves emotional involvement. That wisdom creates peace, and peace creates clarity. A distracted mind struggles with decision-making because too many voices are competing internally. But a focused mind moves with direction, even slowly. Direction matters more than speed, remember that. Most people move fast without direction. They stay busy instead of effective. But focused people ask a different question. What actually matters? That question changes everything. Because once you know what truly matters, you stop wasting energy on meaningless distractions. You stop chasing approval. You stop obsessing over every opinion. You stop comparing your journey constantly. Comparison destroys focus. The moment you become obsessed with someone else's path, you lose connection with your own. That's dangerous, because every minute spent envying someone else is a minute stolen from your own growth. You have a choice. Focus on your own development or spend your life distracted by other people. One creates progress, the other creates resentment, and resentment weakens the mind. Successful people understand that attention is an asset. That means they invest it carefully. They are selective about what they watch, who they listen to, what conversations they entertain, what environments they stay in, because they know focus shapes identity, and identity shapes action. This is why complaining is so destructive. Complaining trains the brain to focus on problems instead of solutions. The more you complain, the more powerless you feel. That's the trap. Complaining feels productive emotionally, but it changes nothing practically. Strong people focus on action instead, even small action, especially small action, because action creates momentum, and momentum creates confidence. A focused person does not wait for perfect conditions. They work with what they have. That's the difference. Weak minds wait. Strong minds adapt. Weak minds obsess over obstacles. Strong minds search for solutions. And this shift begins internally. Everything begins internally, even confidence. People think confidence appears magically. It doesn't. Confidence grows through evidence, and evidence comes from focused action repeated consistently. Every time you finish what you started, confidence grows. Every time you stay disciplined despite distraction, confidence grows. Every time you control your attention intentionally, mental strength grows. That's why focus is a superpower now, because most people lost control of their attention completely. Their mind belongs to social media, belongs to trends, belongs to entertainment, belongs to emotional chaos. But mentally strong people reclaim ownership over their focus, and that changes their entire future. Another truth, you cannot focus properly while constantly living in the past. Some people replay old mistakes every day, old embarrassment, old heartbreak, old failures, again and again. But the past cannot be changed through mental replay. All it does is drain present energy. Learn from the past, then move forward. That's the key. Likewise, obsessing over the future destroys peace too. Preparation is healthy. Constant worry is destructive. There is a difference. A focused mind stays grounded in action, not endless overthinking. Overthinking creates paralysis. Action creates clarity. Most answers appear after movement begins, not before. So stop waiting to feel perfectly ready. You will never feel perfectly ready. Start anyway. Focused people understand that progress is built daily, not emotionally. Daily. One disciplined decision at a time, one focused hour at a time, one repeated habit at a time. That is how transformation happens. Quietly, gradually, then suddenly. And the beautiful thing about focus is this: the more you practice it, the stronger it becomes. Your mind adapts, concentration improves, discipline improves, emotional control improves, because all mental strength is connected. A focused mind is harder to manipulate, harder to distract, harder to discourage. That creates resilience, and resilience creates freedom. Remember this phrase: focus creates direction. Again, focus creates direction. Without focus, life becomes reactive. With focus, life becomes intentional. and intentional living changes everything. So from this moment forward, protect your attention carefully. Stop giving energy to things that weaken you. Stop feeding distractions that steal your future. Stop allowing meaningless noise to dominate your mind. Your attention is valuable. Your energy is valuable. Your life is valuable. You have a choice every single day. Focus on what you can control or continue wasting energy on what you cannot. One path creates peace, the other creates frustration. And in the next chapter, you will learn why discipline, not motivation, is the real foundation of lasting mental strength and personal transformation. Chapter 4. Build mental discipline every single day. Most people wait to feel motivated before they take action. That is why most people stay stuck. Motivation is temporary. Discipline is reliable. That's the key. If your entire life depends on how you feel emotionally each day, your progress will always be unstable. Some mornings you feel inspired. Some mornings you feel tired. Some days you feel confident. Some days you feel doubtful. That is normal. But disciplined people do not build their life around temporary emotions. They build systems, habits, standards, routines, because they understand something powerful. You do not rise to your goals. You fall to your habits. Read that again mentally. You do not rise to your goals. You fall to your habits. Everyone has goals. Everyone says they want success, better health, better confidence, more money, more peace, a stronger mindset. But wanting something means nothing without disciplined action. That's where most people fail. They love the idea of transformation, but they avoid the repetition required for transformation. And repetition is everything. A strong mind is not built in one emotional moment. It is built daily, quietly, through small decisions repeated consistently. Waking up when you said you would, finishing tasks even when you were tired, controlling emotions even when you feel frustrated, keeping promises to yourself. That is discipline. And every time you practice discipline, you strengthen self-respect. That's the key. Self-respect grows when your actions match your words. Every time you break promises to yourself, confidence weakens, because deep down your mind notices inconsistency. You say you will change, then you quit. You say you will focus, then you get distracted. You say you will improve, then you return to old habits again. Over time, the brain stops trusting you. That destroys confidence internally. But disciplined people rebuild trust with themselves through action, not talk. Action. They do what needs to be done even when it feels uncomfortable, especially when it feels uncomfortable, because discomfort is part of growth. Most people are trying to avoid discomfort constantly. That is why they stay weak mentally. They avoid challenge, avoid responsibility, avoid difficult conversations, avoid hard work, avoid discipline. And avoidance slowly destroys confidence. Every avoided responsibility teaches the mind, I cannot handle pressure. That belief becomes dangerous because beliefs shape identity, and identity shapes behavior. That's why mental discipline matters so much. It changes how you see yourself. A disciplined person begins trusting themselves, and self-trust changes everything. Imagine the power of knowing, if I say I will do something, I will do it. That creates internal stability. Most people do not have that. They negotiate with themselves constantly. I'll start tomorrow. I don't feel like it today. One more distraction. One more excuse. That mindset destroys momentum. Discipline removes negotiation. That's the key. When disciplined people decide something matters, they stop debating emotionally every day. They commit, and commitment creates progress. You have a choice. You can continue living emotionally, or you can begin living intentionally. One creates chaos, the other creates transformation. Discipline is not punishment, it is freedom. People misunderstand this completely. They think discipline limits life. No. Lack of discipline limits life. Without discipline, health declines, focus disappears, money gets wasted, time gets wasted, potential gets wasted. Discipline protects your future. That is why mentally strong people embrace structure, not because they are robots, but because structure creates consistency, and consistency creates results. Look at athletes, musicians, writers, leaders, anyone exceptional. They all rely on disciplined repetition, not motivation. No one performs at a high level consistently without routine, without standards, without self-control. Why? Because excellence requires repetition. That's the truth, and repetition is boring sometimes. That's another truth people avoid. Real growth is often repetitive, quiet, unexciting. People want dramatic transformation overnight, but lasting change usually happens slowly. Daily habits, daily choices, daily discipline. That is how powerful identities are built, one decision at a time. Most people quit because results are not immediate. They go to the gym for 1 week and expect transformation, read one book and expect wisdom, practice one skill briefly and expect mastery. That mindset creates disappointment. Strong people understand patience. They trust the process, even when progress feels invisible. That's discipline. Showing up without immediate rewards, continuing without applause, improving without external validation. You don't need their permission to stay disciplined. You don't need constant encouragement. You need standards. That's the key. Standards determine behavior. If your standards are low, your habits become weak. If your standards are strong, your life becomes stronger. Ask yourself honestly, what standards have you accepted? Do you tolerate laziness from yourself, constant excuses, poor focus, emotional reactions, broken promises? Because tolerated behavior becomes identity, and identity shapes destiny. Mentally disciplined people hold themselves accountable, even privately, especially privately, because true discipline is what you do when nobody is watching. Anyone can appear motivated temporarily in front of others, but private consistency reveals true character. That is where transformation happens, alone, quietly, repeatedly. Another important truth: discipline reduces anxiety. Why? Because discipline creates order. A disorganized life creates mental chaos, missed responsibilities, broken routines, poor sleep, constant procrastination. All of that increases stress. But disciplined habits simplify life. Your mind relaxes when it trusts your behavior. That's why routines matter. Simple routines create mental clarity. Wake up intentionally. Move your body. Protect your focus. Control your environment. Finish important tasks first. Reflect daily. These habits may seem small, but small habits shape identity, and identity shapes reality. Remember this phrase: what you repeat, you become. Again, what you repeat, you become. If you repeat distraction, you become distracted. If you repeat excuses, you become unreliable. If you repeat discipline, you become powerful. The brain adapts to repetition constantly. That is why consistency matters more than intensity. One extreme effort changes little. Repeated effort changes everything. You do not need to become perfect overnight. You need to become consistent. That's the key. Consistency builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence builds resilience. And resilience helps you continue when life becomes difficult, because difficult moments will come. Stress will come. Fatigue will come. Failure will come. And in those moments, motivation disappears quickly, but discipline remains. That is why discipline is stronger than emotion. Emotion changes daily. Discipline stays. Think about how many people sabotage themselves because they only act when inspired. That mindset guarantees inconsistency, and inconsistency creates frustration. You start, stop, start again, stop again. Years pass, nothing changes. Not because you lack potential, because you lack disciplined repetition. That's the hard truth. But hard truths create real growth. Weak excuses create comfort temporarily. Strong truths create transformation permanently. So stop waiting for the perfect mood. Stop waiting for life to become easier. Stop waiting to feel ready. You become ready through action, not before action. That's how confidence works too. Confidence is earned. Every disciplined action sends a message internally. I can trust myself. And self-trust is one of the strongest forms of power. Because once you trust yourself, external opinions lose control over you. You stop depending on validation, stop depending on motivation, stop depending on ideal conditions. Now you become stable internally. And stability creates strength. Another reason discipline matters: discipline protects you from destructive impulses. Without discipline, people become slaves to emotion. Every craving controls them. Every distraction controls them. Every mood controls them. That is weakness. But disciplined people pause before acting impulsively. They think long-term. They understand that short-term comfort often creates long-term pain, and short-term discomfort often creates long-term freedom. That perspective changes everything. You have a choice: comfort now and regret later, or discipline now and freedom later. One path weakens the mind, the other strengthens it. And remember this clearly: mental discipline is not something you achieve once, it is something you practice daily, every single day. Some days you will fail. That is normal. But disciplined people do not collapse after failure. They reset quickly. That's the difference. Weak people fail and quit emotionally. Strong people fail and continue strategically. Because perfection is not the goal. Consistency is. And consistency over time creates transformation most people think is impossible. So start small if necessary, but start seriously. Keep promises to yourself. Control small habits. Strengthen focus. Strengthen routines. Strengthen self-control. Daily. Again and again. Because eventually, discipline stops feeling forced. It becomes identity. And once discipline becomes identity, your entire life changes. And in the next chapter, you will learn why protecting your mind from negative influence is essential, because your environment silently shapes your thinking, your habits, and ultimately, your future. Chapter 5. Protect your mind from negative influence. Your mind is always being programmed. Every conversation, every environment, every video, every opinion, every person around you. Something is shaping your thinking constantly. That's the key. And if you are not protecting your mind intentionally, the world will shape it for you automatically. Most people never realize how influenced they are by their environment. They think they are thinking independently, but their habits, fears, beliefs, and emotional patterns are often borrowed from the people around them. That is dangerous, because if you spend enough time around negativity, negativity starts feeling normal. Complainers normalize excuses. Fearful people normalize hesitation. Lazy people normalize mediocrity. Emotionally chaotic people normalize instability. And slowly, without realizing it, your standards begin dropping. That's why protecting your environment matters so much. Your environment silently trains your identity. Read that again. Your environment silently trains your identity. Most people underestimate this completely. They believe strong minds should survive any environment. But even strong minds are affected by constant exposure. If you hear negativity every day, it affects you. If you consume fear every day, it affects you. If you surround yourself with distraction every day, it affects you. The mind absorbs repetition, always. That's why you must become intentional about what enters your mind. You have a choice. You can feed your mind strength, or feed it weakness. You can feed discipline, or feed distraction. You can feed growth, or feed emotional poison. One path builds power, the other destroys potential slowly. And the dangerous part is this: negative influence usually works gradually, not instantly. A person rarely destroys their mindset overnight. It happens slowly, one negative conversation at a time, one toxic habit at a time, one destructive influence at a time, until eventually negativity becomes identity. And once negativity becomes identity, life becomes heavy. Everything feels difficult. Everything feels impossible. Everything feels exhausting. That's why protecting your mind is not optional. It is survival. Most people protect their phone more carefully than their mind. Think about that. They use passwords for devices, but allow any opinion, any content, any energy, and any distraction into their brain freely. That makes no sense. Your mind controls your future. Guard it carefully. That's the key. Pay attention to how people affect your energy. Some people leave you feeling inspired. Others leave you mentally drained. Some people encourage growth. Others constantly spread fear, gossip, excuses, and emotional chaos. Not everyone deserves access to your mental space. That is maturity. You do not need to hate people to protect yourself from their influence. Distance is wisdom sometimes, especially when someone repeatedly weakens your focus, discipline, or peace. Many people stay trapped because they fear disappointing others, so they tolerate toxic environments for years, tolerate disrespect, tolerate negativity, tolerate emotional manipulation, and slowly their confidence disappears, their ambition disappears, their clarity disappears, because the environment keeps reinforcing weakness. You don't need their permission to protect your peace. That's the truth. A mentally strong person understands boundaries. Boundaries are not selfish, they are necessary. Without boundaries, other people's chaos enters your mind constantly, and chaos destroys focus. This is especially true in the modern world. People are consuming non-stop negativity daily. Bad news, arguments, comparison, drama, fear-based content, hour after hour. And then they wonder why their mind feels anxious and exhausted. Your brain responds to what you feed it repeatedly. That's the key. If you feed your mind fear every day, fear grows. If you feed your mind anger every day, anger grows. If you feed your mind distraction every day, focus weakens. Mental nutrition matters, just like physical nutrition matters. You cannot feed the body garbage constantly and expect health. And you cannot feed the mind garbage constantly and expect peace. That's impossible. Yet most people consume mental junk all day. Mindless scrolling, pointless comparison, emotional drama, toxic conversations, and then they complain about feeling unmotivated. Your environment is shaping your emotional state, whether you realize it or not. That's why mentally disciplined people become selective. Selective with content, selective with friendships, selective with attention, selective with energy. Not because they think they are better than others, because they understand influence. And influence creates identity. A distracted environment creates distracted thinking. A negative environment creates negative thinking. A disciplined environment strengthens discipline. Everything affects you, even small things, especially repeated small things. That's how programming works, slow repetition. Think about someone constantly surrounded by people who complain about life. Eventually, they begin complaining too. Not because they consciously decided to, because repeated exposure normalized it. The same thing happens with fear. If everyone around you constantly doubts themselves, avoids risk, and expects failure, your brain begins adapting to that mindset too. That's why growth sometimes requires changing environments, not always physically, mentally, emotionally, digitally. You may need distance from constant negativity, distance from people who drain your energy, distance from habits that weaken your focus, because healing becomes difficult in environments that constantly recreate the damage. That's the key. Strong minds are built intentionally, not accidentally. And intentional growth requires awareness of influence. Ask yourself honestly, what influences dominate your life daily? What conversations surround you? What content shapes your thinking? What environments affect your emotional state? Because those influences are building your future quietly, every day. Most people want confidence without changing their environment. That rarely works long term, because confidence needs reinforcement. Discipline needs reinforcement. Focus needs reinforcement. You become stronger when your environment supports growth instead of sabotage. And remember this, not every influence is obvious. Some influences appear harmless. Constant sarcasm, constant pessimism, constant victim mentality, constant excuses. Over time, these attitudes slowly weaken ambition. Weak thinking spreads easily. That's why you must remain alert mentally, not paranoid, aware. Awareness is power. You have a choice. You can continue allowing random influences into your mind, or you can become intentional about what shapes you. One creates confusion, the other creates clarity, and clarity changes everything. Another important truth: protecting your peace sometimes means being alone temporarily. Many people stay connected to unhealthy environments because they fear loneliness. But loneliness is often healthier than constant mental poison. Silence can heal. Reflection can heal. Distance can heal. Do not fear temporary solitude. Fear becoming mentally weak because you stayed in destructive environments too long. That's the danger. Some people lose themselves slowly trying to fit into environments that were destroying them internally. Never sacrifice your peace to feel accepted. Never sacrifice your standards to feel included. Never sacrifice your future to avoid uncomfortable change. That's weakness disguised as comfort. Mentally strong people choose growth over approval, even when it is uncomfortable, even when others misunderstand them, because they understand something important. Your future depends heavily on what influences your mind daily. And once you truly understand that, you become more careful. You stop consuming everything mindlessly. You stop entertaining every negative conversation. You stop giving unlimited access to people who drain your energy. That is emotional maturity. Another thing you must understand: your inner voice eventually sounds like your environment. If your environment constantly criticizes, doubts, fears, and complains, your inner voice slowly copies that tone. But if your environment encourages discipline, focus, accountability, and growth, your inner voice becomes stronger too. That's why powerful environments matter. And if you do not currently have a strong environment around you, create one intentionally. Through books, through learning, through disciplined routines, through educational content, through silence and reflection. You can still train your mind even if your surroundings are imperfect. But you must become intentional. That's the key. Nothing changes accidentally. Strong minds are built through conscious repetition, daily. Protecting your mind is not weakness, it is wisdom. Because your attention is limited, your energy is limited, and your future is shaped by whatever repeatedly enters your mind. Remember this phrase: protect your mind like your future depends on it, because it does. Again, protect your mind like your future depends on it. Most people wait until they are mentally exhausted before they start protecting their peace. Do not wait that long. Start now. Be more selective, more disciplined, more aware. Pay attention to what strengthens you. Pay attention to what weakens you, and choose accordingly. Every single day. Because eventually your environment becomes your mindset, and your mindset becomes your reality. That's how transformation happens, quietly, internally, repeatedly. And in the next chapter, you will learn why silence, solitude, and deep self-awareness are essential for building unshakable inner strength in a noisy and distracted world. Final chapter: become the person who controls their reality. Everything changes the moment you realize this truth. Your life is not shaped only by circumstances. It is shaped by your mind. That's the key. Most people spend years trying to change external conditions while ignoring internal patterns. They want a better future, but keep the same thinking, the same habits, the same emotional reactions, the same excuses, and then they wonder why life stays the same. But reality responds to identity. Your daily thoughts shape your habits. Your habits shape your actions. Your actions shape your future. That cycle never stops. Which means this: if you want a different life, you must become a different person mentally. Not temporarily motivated, not emotionally inspired for 1 week, truly transformed internally. That is where real power begins. Most people wait for confidence before they act. Strong people act before confidence arrives. Most people wait for perfect conditions. Strong people adapt to imperfect conditions. Most people blame circumstances. Strong people build discipline. That's the difference. And that difference compounds over time. A weak mindset repeated daily creates suffering. A disciplined mindset repeated daily creates freedom. You have a choice every single day. You can continue living reactively, or you can begin living intentionally. One path keeps you emotionally trapped. The other builds personal power. Throughout this audiobook, you learned something important. Your mind must be trained, not occasionally, daily. You learned that thoughts become patterns, and patterns become reality. You learned that emotional reactions weaken clarity, that calm creates control, that focus creates direction, that discipline creates identity, that your environment shapes your thinking, that silence reveals truth. and that freedom begins when you stop depending on external validation. These are not just motivational ideas, these are life principles. Ignore them and the mind becomes chaotic. Apply them consistently and the mind becomes powerful. That's the key. Consistency, not perfection. Most people destroy their progress because they expect immediate transformation. Then they become discouraged when growth feels slow. But strong people understand something deeper. Transformation is repetition, again and again, daily mental control, daily emotional control, daily discipline, daily awareness. That is how identity changes. Quietly, internally, repeatedly. And eventually, the new version of you becomes natural, not forced, natural. Think about who you are becoming through your daily habits. Every repeated action is building identity. Every repeated thought is building identity. Every repeated emotional reaction is building identity. The question is, are your patterns building strength or building weakness? Be honest, because honesty creates growth. Excuses create stagnation. Many people want change without responsibility. That never works. Responsibility is power. The moment you take ownership over your mind, your reactions, your focus, and your habits, your life begins changing, not instantly, but steadily. That's how real growth works. And understand this clearly, no one is coming to save you mentally. No one can think for you. No one can discipline you consistently. No one can build your mindset for you. That responsibility belongs to you. And while that may sound heavy, it is actually freedom. Because if you are responsible, then you are powerful. If your future depends on your daily choices, then your future is still changeable. That's hope, real hope, not fantasy, not wishful thinking, practical hope built through action. You don't need to become perfect overnight. You need to become intentional daily. That's the key. Most people fail because they rely on emotion instead of systems. They wait until they feel ready. But readiness comes through movement. Confidence comes through action. Clarity comes through repetition. Everything meaningful is built through consistent effort, not emotional intensity. Consistency beats intensity, always. One calm decision repeated daily can transform your life completely over time. One disciplined habit repeated daily can change your identity. One shift in thinking repeated consistently can reshape your future. Never underestimate small, consistent actions. That is how powerful people are built, quietly, while others stay distracted. And remember this, your environment matters. Your focus matters. Your self-talk matters. Your standards matter. Everything you repeatedly tolerate becomes part of your reality eventually. So raise your standards internally. Stop tolerating excuses from yourself. Stop feeding distraction constantly. Stop rehearsing fear daily. Stop allowing emotional chaos to control your direction. Protect your peace. Protect your focus. Protect your mind. Because your mind is the foundation of your life. A weak mind creates unnecessary suffering. A disciplined mind creates opportunity. A calm mind creates clarity. A focused mind creates momentum. And a trained mind creates freedom. That's why this journey matters so much. You are not just changing habits, you are changing identity, and identity shapes destiny. Most people never realize how powerful they could become because they never train themselves consistently. They surrender to impulses, surrender to distraction, surrender to fear. But you have another option. You can become mentally disciplined, emotionally controlled, focused, intentional, self-aware. And once those qualities become identity, your reality begins changing automatically because your behavior changes automatically. That's the power of internal transformation. The outside changes after the inside changes. Never forget that. And there will still be difficult days, stressful moments, unexpected setbacks, moments of doubt. That is part of life. But mentally strong people respond differently. They do not collapse emotionally every time life becomes difficult. They adapt, reset, continue. That resilience is what separates powerful people from reactive people. And resilience is trainable. Everything you practiced in this audiobook is trainable. That's the good news. You are not trapped permanently in old patterns. You can change, but only if you practice consistently. You have a choice. Stay unconscious and reactive, or become aware and intentional. Stay emotionally controlled by circumstances, or become mentally strong enough to control your response. Stay distracted, or focus on building a meaningful future. The decision repeats daily, and daily decisions become destiny. Remember these words carefully. Calm thoughts create powerful outcomes. Again, calm thoughts create powerful outcomes. A calm mind thinks clearly. A clear mind acts intentionally. Intentional action creates powerful results. That is how reality changes, from the inside out. So, from this moment forward, stop waiting for life to transform magically. Train yourself, discipline yourself, observe yourself, strengthen yourself. Protect your mind like your future depends on it, because it does. And one day, if you continue consistently, you will wake up and realize something powerful. The person who once felt controlled by fear, distraction, emotion, and insecurity no longer exists, because now you are different internally, stronger, calmer, more focused, more disciplined, more aware. And once you control your mind, you begin shaping your reality. Your reality is not built in a single day. It is built thought by thought, decision by decision, habit by habit. The mind you train today creates the life you live tomorrow. If you remember only one thing from this audiobook, remember this. Calm thoughts create powerful outcomes. When you control your thoughts, you control your emotions. When you control your emotions, you control your actions. And when you control your actions consistently, you shape your reality. So stop waiting for life to change first. Train your mind first. Because the strongest people in the world are not the loudest. They are the most disciplined internally. Listen again. Practice daily. Repeat the principles until they become part of you, and never forget, your mind is either your greatest weapon or your greatest prison.